Welcome back to Top 10 Scary Urban Legends, and if you're new, be sure to give that a like and subscribe and hit that bell notification so you never miss a video. From the infamous Fan of the Opera story to stories of man-eating beasts, here are the top 10 scary French urban legends that you don't want to know. I'm your host Andrew, and let's get right into this. At our number 10 spot, we have the Phantom of the Opera. The Phantom of the Opera is a well-known legend that is closely linked to the history of the Opera Garnier in Paris. This legend originated from a fire that occurred in the Salle Pelletier, the predecessor of the Opera Garnier, in 1873. A pianist named Ernest was horribly disfigured in the fire and lost his companion as a result. Overcome with grief, he chose to isolate himself from the world and even took refuge in the basement of this place, which was still under construction at the time. Ernest spent the remainder of his life in the shadows of this building and only ate fish from the underground lake of the opera. His sorrowful cries could be heard in the background of performances, as many guests would report. After his disappearance, strange events started to occur in the Opera Garnier. For example, a machinist was found hanged, but when they did investigation, there was no rope to be found. And also, a chandelier fell during one performance, killing a spectator seated in the seat number 13. All these mysterious occurrences were attributed to the Phantom of the Opera, who is believed to still haunt the halls of the famous theater. These mysteries have captured the imaginations of many writers, including Gaston Leroux. He wrote the novel The Phantom of the Opera in 1910, which is a worldwide success and largely based on this legend. Even today, the legend continues to live on as Lodge number 5 in Opera Garnier is permanently rented by a mysterious stranger. This lodge is strategically located within the theater, allowing its occupant to see the performances but remain unseen. At our number 9 spot, we have the Beast of Gévaudan. The Beast of Gévaudan remains one of the most intriguing and mysterious legends in French history. The terror caused by this man-eating beast or beast lasted for 3 years, from 1764 all the way to 1767. The attacks took place in the Margeride Mountains of South Central France and spanned over an area of 90 by 80 kilometers. Eyewitnesses reported that the beast was formidable with sharp teeth and an immense tail. The descriptions of the animal also varied widely, with some saying it was a striped hyena, while others claimed it was like a large wolf, dog, or even a wolf-dog hybrid. Regardless of its actual appearance, the Beast of Gévaudan was known for its brutal methods of attack, which often involved tearing out the throats of his victims. The Kingdom of France took threat to this beast very seriously and even devoted a significant amount of manpower and wealth to hunting this animal down. The resources of several nobles, soldiers, and royal huntsmen, and even civilians were used in the pursuit of this beast. But despite their efforts, the attacks persisted and the number of victims continued to rise. The exact number of victims is not known, but estimates suggest that the beast killed and injured hundreds of people. Although the beast was reported killed several times, the attacks did not stop until 1767. To this day, the identity of the Beast of Gévaudan remains a mystery, and its legends continue to captivate people's imaginations and if there was really a man-eating beast in France during this time. At our number 8 spot, we have the father of cinematography. Louis Le Prince is a name that should ring a bell to all those into cinema, as he is widely regarded as the true father of cinematography. However, despite his monumental contribution to the world of motion pictures, his name is often overshadowed by figures like Thomas Edison and the Lumiere brothers. The reason for this is that Le Prince disappeared before he could showcase his groundbreaking invention to the world. In 1888, Le Prince shot the first film in history in Leeds, England. However, instead of rushing to show the world what he created, he chose to be patient and refine his invention. After 2 years of careful tweaking, he was finally ready to present his work to the public. Then in September 1890, he boarded a train to Paris with all the materials and patents he needed for the showcase. But unfortunately, he never made it to the French capital. His friends were waiting in Paris to pick him up, but they found no trace of him. This mystery sparked many rumors and theories about what could have happened to Le Prince. Some people said that his brother Albert killed him over their inheritance, while others believed that he drowned himself or just decided to fled to start a new life. But the most tantalizing theory was that Thomas Edison himself was behind Le Prince's disappearance, as he wanted to ensure his monopoly over the invention of cinema. Despite the many theories surrounding his disappearance, one thing is for certain: Louis Le Prince left a lasting impact on the world of motion pictures and will forever be known, at least for me, as a visionary inventor. All the way at our number 7 spot, we have the murdered monks. The Abbaye de Montemer is a 12th century monastery located in Normandy, France, and it is considered by many to be one of the most haunted places in the country as well. The story of Mortimer Abbey begins with the Cistercian monks who built the monastery on marshy land that was referred to as the Dead Pond, a name that would eventually become the moniker for the abbey itself. Despite the monastery's size and grandeur, it was often plagued by financial difficulties, which ultimately led to its downfall. By the time of the French Revolution, the abbey was in a state of disrepair, but a small community of monks still lived within its walls. However, their presence was not enough to save them from the wrath of the revolutionaries, who decided to storm the abbey in 1790, killing 4 monks who lived there and leaving a scene of blood and chaos behind. Since then, the abbey has been the site of numerous ghostly sightings, with rumors of ghostly monks haunting the ruins. Fortunately, there has even been accounts of a benevolent ghost there, dressed in the robes of a monk, appearing during World War II and even saving an English paratrooper from an enemy attack. And if you decide to visit, there's a higher chance you'll probably encounter one of the more angered spirits of the 4 murdered monks, but let's just hope you encounter this one. Number 6, the Mont Saint-Michel. The Mont Saint-Michel, a settlement located on the border of Brittany and Normandy, is a place of both beauty and terror. This majestic fortress built on an island is surrounded by the sea, which makes it a popular tourist destination, but this fairy tale-like location still has a dark and haunting side to it. According to the legend, the island was discovered when Saint Albert received a dream from Archangel Michael, directing him to build a monastery there. Despite initially disregarding the vision, the Archangel burned a hole in the bishop's head to reinforce the message, and the monastery was built. The island has been a place of worship and pilgrimage for centuries and has been the subject of many myths and ghost stories over the years as well. The island is known for their Battle of Mont Saint-Michel, one of the bloodiest days in French history. It is said that the wails of English soldiers who lost their lives during the war can still be heard on calm days with low tides. Many people believe that the souls of these soldiers are unable to rest and continue to haunt the island, never moving to the afterlife. Before the French Revolution, the island was inhabited by monks and other pious people who decided to bury their dead in the walls of the church. When the revolution reached Mont Saint-Michel, the monks were forced to abandon the island, and the abbey was then turned into a prison. Some say that the ghosts of the dead monks who were disturbed by the desecration of their once sacred location still roam the island as well. And the hump of our list, we have the Jack and Jill nursery rhyme. As you already know, nursery rhymes' origins aren't as charming as their true story. One of these is the Jack and Jill nursery rhyme. It has 2 popular interpretations. One is tied to the French Revolution, and the other one is tied to King Charles I of England. In the first interpretation, Jack represents King Louis XVI of France, and Jill represents Queen Mary Antoinette. The rhyme tells the story of their execution during the Reign of Terror in 1793. But in the second interpretation, the rhyme revolves around King Charles I's attempt to increase taxes on liquid measures. The standard volume of Jack was reduced and the tax remained the same. A gill, which was twice the volume of a Jack, was also reduced as a result. The volume mark on the standard Jack measure was indicated with a crown, and the reduction of the volume caused the crown mark to fall, leading to the lyrics, Jack fell down and broke his crown.
Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. Jack fell down and broke his crown, and Jill came tumbling after.
Number 4, the worst barber ever. Travel back in time to medieval Paris and the Ile de la Cite, when a barber was known to frequently receive foreign students who were housed by neighboring canons. Unfortunately, some of these young students would then vanish without a trace. In those days of widespread poverty and frequent attacks, it was believed that these students were victims of a violent crime, and with no family left in Paris to inquire about their disappearance, their fate was left to speculation. However, one day, an unusual incident changed the course of events. A dog was barking loudly in front of a barber's door for several days, and its master, a German student, had not returned from his appointment. The police were then called in to investigate and made a shocking discovery. The barber was cutting the throats of his young clients, then disposing of their bodies through a trap door in the cellar of the pastry chef next door. It was said that the pastry chef used the bodies to make some of the best pies in all of Paris. The barber and pastry chef paid the price for their crimes, and they were burned alive in a public square. Their houses were razed to the ground, and today the former site of the bakery is used as a garage for the Paris police. Number 3, the haunted lighthouse at Tevennec. Despite its picturesque location on the coast, the Tevennec lighthouse was notorious for the tales of madness and death that surrounded the 23 lighthouse operators who lived and worked there before it was automated in 1910. The area around the lighthouse has a rich maritime history and was known for their frequent shipwrecks that occurred there, including the crash of the French ship Sedusant during the Napoleonic Wars, which led to the death of hundreds of sailors. According to local legends, the area is also haunted by the spirits of the Celtic seafarers and warriors, who has been said to haunt the lighthouse since its inception. The tales of madness that befell the lighthouse operators are particularly eerie. The first operator, Henry Guzenik, was reportedly driven to madness by ghostly voices that spoke to him in the Breton language and told him to leave the lighthouse every single day. One of these successors are said to have had similar experiences, leading the French government to make Tevennec a two-man lighthouse and even recruited married couples to work there. However, few couples were willing to live and work at this lighthouse, for obvious reasons. And those that did suffered untimely and tragic deaths, including a family with 3 children and a cow.
But it's not relevant, is it?
The story surrounding the Tevennec Lighthouse is filled with the tales of failed exorcisms, crucifixes installed to ward off evil spirits, and even a violent storm that arrived just as one of the operators were giving birth inside of the lighthouse. So definitely one of the places in France that you don't want to visit. Number 2, the encounter of Marius de Wilde. The French commune of Coralbo made headlines in September 10, 1954, when a local railway worker named Marius de Wilde claimed to have been visited by extraterrestrials. According to the reports, de Wilde claimed that a cigar-shaped UFO landed near his garden, and 2 small creatures in spacesuits resembling dive costumes emerged. The UFO shot a beam of light that paralyzed de Wilde, and by the time he was recovered, the aliens are already getting ready to leave. Despite an investigation by the authorities that found unusual marks on the railway tracks, there was no concrete evidence of an alien encounter. The stories of de Wilde's experience with the extraterrestrials quickly was widespread and reached the wine-producing village of Châteauneuf-du-Pape, located hundreds of miles from Coralbo. The local mayor and town council were keen to protect their citizens and vineyards from potential alien invaders, and as a result, they passed a municipal decree that banned all UFOs from landing, taking off, or flying over the community. Which is definitely strange, but I guess the UFOs listened, because ever since they made this decree, they haven't seen one since. Number 1, the ghost of Pont-Marie. The City of Love is also the city of spine-chilling ghost stories, one of which stems from the era of France during World War II. This period saw the division of France into 2 parts, one directly occupied by the Germans and the other being a puppet state by them. However, amidst the hardship and turmoil, a brave woman rose to the occasion and joined the French resistance. This Parisian lady was married to a resistance fighter and was tasked with collecting information from an SS officer, with whom she started an affair. One fateful winter night, she was scheduled to meet her husband on Pont-Marie Bridge, which spans across the River Seine, but he ended up never arriving. Understanding that something was amiss, the woman wept, waiting through the night until she eventually froze to death. Ever since, reports have surfaced of her ghost appearing on cold nights on this bridge, still crying and waiting for her husband to show up. These are the top 10 scary French urban legends. What do you guys think about this list? Leave a comment down below with your thoughts and leave some suggestions for some future videos that we might do. And if you enjoyed, be sure to click like and subscribe and hit that bell notification so you never miss a future video. I'm your host Andrew, and I hope you guys have a scary day.
Top 10 scary urban legends here. Okay, sorry, I know that was bad, but I'm half British, so please don't yell at me. I'm your host, Makayla, and today we are talking about top 10 British scary urban legends. Starting off at number 10, Loch Ness Monster. Of course, Nessie has to come first.
From the beginning, it was Nessie who wanted me there.
Nessie? You nicknamed my daughter after the Loch Ness Monster?
Almost everyone knows the story of the monster in the lake that people have been trying to spot for thousands of years. The first recorded spotting was in 565, but few have actually seen it. The world took an interest in this myth in the 1930s, when the first photograph was released claiming that this was the Loch Ness Monster. In 1933, Alec Campbell reported a sighting by Aldi McKay of what she believed to be Nessie. Mr. Campbell's report described a whale-like creature in the loch's waters, cascading and churning. Then in 1934, a British surgeon, Colonel Robert Wilson, claimed he took a photograph of the monster while driving along the northern shore of Loch Ness. I mean, we have only discovered like 5% of the water on Earth, so maybe there's something lurking deep down, but what do you guys think? Is she real? Is she all just a hoax? Now at number 9, Robin Hood. Legend has it Robin Hood was an outlaw living in the Sherwood Forest with his merry men. The first known literary reference to Robin Hood and his men was in 1377, and the Sloane manuscripts in the British Museum have an account of Robin's life, which states that he was born around 1160 in Lochsirlee in South Yorkshire. Robin became a popular folk hero because of his generosity to the poor and peasants, and his hatred of the sheriff who enforced the forest laws. Some date his adventures as taking place during Edward II, but other versions say the king was Richard I. Robin had fought in the Crusades alongside Richard I before returning to England to find his land had been seized by the sheriff, which he wasn't too happy about. Coming in at number 8, Grindylows. You know, kinda like in Harry Potter. I know, how many Harry Potter references am I gonna make on this channel? Holy! Grindylows are supernatural creatures that appear in the folklore of England, mostly the Lancaster area. They are described as small, non-human entities with scaly skin, a greenish complexion and sharp claws and teeth, and long arms with lengthy fingers at the end. They dwell in ponds and marshes waiting for unsuspecting children, which they then grab them with their strong grip and drag them into the waters. Grindylows have been used as shadowy figures to frighten children away from pools, marshes, or ponds where they could drown. Here at number 7, London Fog. On December 4th in 1952, smog began to cover London. The smog was present for 5 whole days and ended up leading to the passing of at least 4,000 people. On a regular Thursday afternoon, a high-pressure air mass stalled over the Thames River Valley. Suddenly, cold air came in from the west side, and the air in London became trapped. The problem worsened by the low temperatures, which caused people living there to burn extra coal in their furnaces to keep warm. The smoke, soot, and sulfur dioxide from the area's industries, along with the stuff from cars and consumer engine usage, caused heavy smog to smother the city. By the morning of December 5th, it was visible across hundreds of square miles. It became so thick and dense that by December 7th, there was no sunlight and visibility was down to only 5 yards in many places. Eventually, all transportation came to a halt, but not before the smog caused several train accidents, including a collision between 2 trains near London Bridge. However, that wasn't the worst thing. The worst effect of the smog was the respiratory distress it caused in humans and animals, including difficulty breathing and vomiting. A high number of people in the area, numbering in the thousands, passed away in their sleep that weekend. Now, it's a little crazy to me that all this happened and so many people ended up losing their lives. Taking our number 6 spot, Owlman. A small churchyard in Morton was a sacred spot long before the 13th century church was built there, with views over the Helford River. Sightings of a flying creature about 5 feet tall, half man, half owl, with glowing red eyes, silver feathers, and crab-like claws have terrified tourists since the 1970s. Oddly, all but one of the dozen or so eyewitnesses of the Owlman have been girls or young women, most under 16. So is this a creature that lurks the night, or is it a real person that wants to capture women and hurt them? Halfway number 5, King Arthur and Excalibur. Still a relatively well-known myth, King Arthur and the Sword and the Stone is a myth of strength and honor. The legend goes that the magician Merlin placed the sword Excalibur in a stone, and whoever removed it would be the rightful king. Then Arthur removed it and went on to defend the country against invaders, along with many other heroic tales. King Arthur is a central figure in English history, and though some of the legends surrounding him may not be true, we do have centuries of literature, so I mean, in medieval times, this one doesn't seem too much of a stretch, but who knows. Number 4, Black Shuck, or Black Dog. The legend is perhaps the most common local myth in Britain. Among the graveyards, by crossroads, in the darkest forests, lurks a fear stirred first in the early medieval times. In Suffolk, this calf-sized hound with glowing red eyes is a harbinger of doom and death. It often appears during electrical storms, such as the one that struck both the churches of Bungay and Blythburgh on the same day at the exact same moment in August 1577. Leaving scorched claw marks on the church door at Blythburgh, and there were at least 2 fatalities. I mean, remember what I said about black dogs in top 10 TikToks that will make you question reality? Which, check out the video if you haven't already, but I mean, I don't know. I love black dogs, but still. Coming in at number 3, red caps. A red cap is a malicious and malevolent goblin creature. They are said to live in the ruined castles along the Scottish borders, murdering those who stray into their homes. They wear red hats that are dyed with their victims' blood. And to keep their hats red, they must hurt others regularly, because if they don't, they won't survive. You can't outrun a red cap and they will always catch you. I mean, go there and see if you can find one, but know that you have been warned. Here at number 2, the Nuchlavi. It's said to be the most terrifying creature of Britain. Around the waters of Orkney lives a skinless human horse, a being of rage and pestilence. The Nuchlavi has a head of a man, only much bigger. Some people speak of flippers on its legs. The sea-dwelling beast kills crops with its breath, and makes livestock sick when it comes onto land. Smelling of burning seaweed and set to exact revenge on any helpless soul, unfortunate enough to witness its arrival. Like many British monsters, it's said that if you want to escape from its demonic presence, you need to leap across a freshwater stream or river. Taking our number 1 spot, Jack the Ripper. Jack the Ripper terrorized London in 1888, taking the lives of at least 5 women and disfiguring their bodies in an unusual manner, indicating that the killer had a very good knowledge of human anatomy. The culprit was never captured or even identified, and Jack the Ripper remains one of England's and the world's most infamous criminals. All 5 passings took place within a mile of each other, in or near the Whitechapel district of London's East End, from August 7th to September 10th, 1888. Now, despite having committed these heinous crimes and investigations claiming definitive evidence on their identity, his or her name and motive is still unknown. Well, that's all I got for you today. If you guys like this video, make sure to let us know in the comments, and I'll see you guys next time.
Welcome back to Top 10 Scary Urban Legends. I'm your host Andrew, and today we will be talking about the top 10 scary Spanish urban legends that will creep you out. Let's get right into this list. At a number 10 spot, we have the Guantanamo's ghost prisoners. The military prison at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, took its first 20 detainees in 2002. Despite various calls to shutter it, it still stands almost 20 years later. It was built in order to house prisoners captured in Afghanistan or other terrorists. At its peak, it housed just under 800 people, with many of the prisoners being detained without any sort of trial. In the early days of the detention camp, many of the prisoners were tortured physically and mentally. So this prison was the real deal and is in many movies and TV shows to this day, and you can probably see the depiction they do on it. Except after all the abuse, death, and injustice, the spirits have been said to be very aggressive in this prison. This is no surprise. Just doing my research on this place alone made me think, how could the US government create this prison in the first place? In short, it's a terrible place for terrible people. But since many were taken here without any sort of trial, I really wonder how many were innocent and actually ended up passing away in this very prison, knowing that they're innocent and they were treated the worst out of any prison in the world probably. At our number 9 spot, with the El Chupacabras. Imagine being in a world where a mysterious creature roams free and just wreaks havoc on livestock, especially when having livestock meant life or death. This is the world that people in Puerto Rico found themselves in during 1995, when the first reported sightings of the El Chupacabras were recorded. The name Chupacabras comes from the Spanish words chupar, which is to suck, and cabras, which is goat, which refers to its common depiction as blood-sucking reptile-like creatures with huge red eyes and sharp quills on its spine. This creature is said to stand 4 feet tall and be similar to a vampire, kangaroo, and wild dog all mashed together. Many people who claim to have seen it say that it's real, but others believe it's completely a legend. The first sighting of the Chupacabras was reported in Puerto Rico in 1995 when a local woman discovered dead livestock that had been drained of their blood. After this, reports of sightings started coming in from various parts of Puerto Rico and other countries, which included the Dominican Republic, Bolivia, Chile, Argentina, Colombia, El Salvador, Panama, Peru, and you name it. People claim to have seen the creature attacking and killing their livestock, and even some people reported seeing the creature itself. In 2011, a book called Tracking the Chupacabras was published by Benjamin Radford. Radford concluded that the eyewitness in the original Puerto Rican incident has based her description of the creature on a sci-fi horror film she had seen. After 5 years of investigation, Radford officially denied the existence of such creatures. However, many people still believe that the Chupacabras are real, and sightings did continue to surface afterward in 2018 and 2019. At a number 8 spot, we have the Cuban Missile Crisis. So this is a time when the world almost ended, so this has to be a spot on this list. The 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis is considered to be one of the most intense 13 days of the Cold War, and this is because one single misstep could have meant a whole nuclear destruction all over the world. However, the failed Bay of Pigs invasion, the missile crisis began when US surveillance discovered what the Soviets sanctioned missiles in Cuba. And why did this scare Americans? Well, because Cuba is only 90 miles away from Florida, so the US debated whether to send an air raid or perhaps an invasion of Cuba in order to destroy these supposed missiles. After these intense 13 days of intense negotiations, with everyone a millimeter away from nuking one another, President John Kennedy and the Soviet leader were able to make a deal. To make this even more scarier, a Russian army officer named Vasily Arkhipov is considered to be the man who literally saved everyone on Earth. This is because on October 27, 1962, he was in a nuclear submarine when the US started to use non-lethals to bring their submarines up. They didn't know if this was an act of war, so they were just seconds away from launching a nuclear warhead when Vasily stood up to everyone and demanded not to send it out, possibly saving the entire human civilization. At a number 7 spot with the Jaco Santino. The story begins when a traveling farmer who resided near Orcovis in the early 20th century. The man fished till late at night, and on his way home, he lit a Jaco to light the way. Unfortunately, the Jaco caught fire before the man arrived home. He went through his possessions and discovered a wooden crucifix among them. He lit up the crucifix and used it as a lantern because he was in desperate need of light. The man would die only a few days later after contracting a serious illness. Since he burned the cross, it is said that his spirit was condemned to stay on earth until he finds all the ashes of the sacred crucifix. So the legend says if you see a mysterious light floating around, it is the man with the Jaco, and be sure not to disturb his search because they say he's a very aggressive spirit when provoked. At a number 6 spot with Jacinto's well. We're going to talk about a natural well, and from the looks of it, it seems like a nice tourist spot to take photos of, but locals claim a very tragic backstory instead. Back in the day, there was a supposed farmer by the name of Jacinto. Every day he would take his cows out to eat around that area because who wouldn't want to let their cows see this type of views? For some odd reason, Jacinto would ensure no cows would get out of line by using a rope and securing it around his own waist. Probably not the brightest idea in hindsight. This is because on one rainy night, Jacinto happened to be by this well when thunder startled one of his cows. The cow eventually ran into this well, bringing Jacinto down with him. Now it's said that if you go down to this well and shout out his names, the wave below will hit harder and higher. In the hump of our list, we have La Mano Peluda. The legend of La Mano Peluda is a spooky tale that can be heard in almost every Latin American country, but is especially popular in Mexico and Colombia. The story dates back to the Spanish Inquisition and has been passed down through generations of storytellers. The tale has many different versions, but most of them tell the story of a man who was wrongfully accused of a crime and had his hand cut off as punishment. This is when he swore revenge on everyone, and when he died, his hand came back seeking revenge. In the Mexican version of the story, the legend takes place in the year 1908 in Puebla. There was a man named Senor Villa who is known as Horta, and he and his wife, La Gangosa, owned a pawn shop. Horta was a terrible man who ripped off his customers and treated them very badly. After his death, a local newspaper ran a story that a graveyard keeper told them. The graveyard keeper claimed to see a black hairy hand with rings sticking out of Horta's grave. The hand would look for victims to tear out their eyeballs and choke them to death, then return back into Horta's grave. Since then, there has been many reports of people claiming to have seen this hand pulling them out of their bed while sleeping, and others have reported seeing it moving through the field searching for more victims. Other versions of this legend describe the hand as being black, hairy, with sharp nails twice the size of an adult's hand, all while leaving a trail of blood behind it. Maggots can also be seen moving around the hand, and the hand waits for children to get out of bed. At our number 4 spot, we have the Treasure of Lima. The Treasure of Lima is a fascinating legend of a buried treasure that was removed from Lima, Peru in 1820 and never recovered. The treasure is estimated to be worth up to $208 million in today's money. The treasure was originally collected by the Roman Catholic Church in Lima and was intended to be transported to Mexico for safekeeping during the Peruvian War of Independence. Captain William Thompson was put in charge of transporting the riches to Mexico, but he and his crew turned pirates and stole the treasure. They then buried it on Cocos Island off the coast of present-day Costa Rica. Thompson and his first mate were the only ones to survive out of the crew, and they agreed to lead the Spanish to the stolen treasure to save their lives. They took them as far as the Cocos Island and then managed to escape into the jungle. Thomas, the first mate, and the treasure were never seen again. Though it is believed that Thompson returned to Newfoundland with the aid of a whaling ship, Forbes settled in California and became a successful businessman, but never returned to the island. Since that time, hundreds of of treasure hunters have traveled to the Cocos Island to find the treasure of Lima, but none have succeeded and many have lost their lives attempted to find this supposed treasure. One theory is that the treasure was not buried on the Cocos Island at all, but on an unknown island off the coast of Central America. The Costa Rican government does not allow treasure hunting any longer and believes no treasure exists on this island, but people remain convinced. At number 3 spot, we have Duende. In Western Honduras, particularly in Copan Ruinas, there is a terrifying legend that has been passed down from generation to generation. The legend of the El Duende, the Goblin. According to the Vejetos or old folks, El Duende is an evil little man with dark skin who wears an elegant green suit and a big hat or a sombrero. He is said to only appear to single women, particularly on remote roads to rural villages or when women are alone in their houses. The legend goes that El Duende is an enamorado, a playboy who offers gifts and wealth to women in order to entice them to go away with him. Those who accept his offerings become enchanted by his evil powers and suffer consequences such as becoming mute or mentally impaired. If the women do not pay attention to the Duende, he chases them and throws rocks or cow dung at them. The Vejetos suggest that if El Duende appears to a woman, the best thing to do is to remain calm, act friendly, and ask him for something impossible, such as an open basket filled with water from a river. The frustration of not being able to fulfill such a request will cause the Duende to disappear and never to return to bother the woman again. Number 2, the house in Pinar del Rio. Although the date of when this house was built is unknown, what is known about it has been abandoned for over 20 years. This property is located right at kilometer 78 of the highway that connects Havana with Pinar del Rio. And every time someone decides to visit this abandoned house, they also come out reporting something very strange and sometimes supernatural. Former residents of the home have all left due to feeling uncomfortable in the house. For example, couples who have stayed slowly begin to argue more and more aggressively. Some have told others that it's impossible to sleep at night because of the constant nightmares you get while in this home. Meanwhile, the residents of this area claim to see strange lights coming from the inside and have seen wild dogs enter the house which are nowhere to be seen after. It is said that the house was originally built for a man named Juan, who is a very lonely man, and eventually the house would start to present supernatural activity once he started living in it. Soon after, he would then go deaf and would live inside of this house with these spirits as his friends. Since the man has passed, the spirits of this house are unwelcoming, and if you dare step foot, you may be putting you and your family's lives in danger. Number 1, Cementerio La Reina. This cemetery is essentially an outdoor crumbling art museum. This was a monument to plantation farming and wealthy trade barons when it first opened in 1800s. Most tombs are crowned with massive statues of beauty and grace. In recent years, the cemetery has fallen into disrepair and has been targeted by many grave robbers. Sleeping Beauty statue is one of the many statues that stands out to many visitors. The story goes that the young woman buried there was promised to an older wealthy plantation owner, but her heart belonged to a young local boy. When her wedding drew near, she ran off and married her true sweetheart. Unfortunately, she died soon after of cholera. Regardless of her betrayal, the older man buried her in the family space and erected a large statue that still stands today, a restless spirit in life and in death. Well, these are the top 10 scary Spanish urban legends that will creep you out. What did you guys think about this list? Leave a comment down below with your thoughts, and don't forget to like and subscribe to this video for some more scary content. I'm your host Andrew, and I hope you guys have a terrifying day. For everything in history, it seems like Europe has always been in the center of it all. From wars to international trading, it seems like everything is affected by Europe, and this also extends to some stories about the supernatural. Here are your top 10 scary European urban legends. I'm your host Andrew, and let's get right into this. At a number 10 spot, we have the Chislehurst Caves. This large cave in England spans 22 miles of passageways split into 3 distinct sections named Saxon, Druid, and Roman. They all branch out and then end up linking one another soon after. In World War II, many British civilians would use this cave to hide from the bombings, but these caves date way further back than that. because they date all the way in 1250, where there are written reports of mining in these caves. Throughout history, the cave was also used as a cemetery to keep the dead, which is why many people believe it is haunted. People regularly report hearing screams, murmurs, children giggling, and footsteps echoing from deep within the cave. Locals even claim that the reports are from the spirits who passed away in the cave, trying to let the living know of the eternal suffering. At a number 9 spot, we have London fog. On December 4th in 1952, smog began to cover all of London. The smog was present for 5 whole days and ended up leading to the passing of at least 4,000 people. On a regular Thursday afternoon, a high-pressure air mass stalled over the Thames River Valley. Suddenly, cold air came in from the west side, and the air in London became trapped. The problem worsened by the low temperatures, which caused people living there to burn extra coal in their furnaces to keep warm. The smoke, soot, and sulfur dioxide from the area's industries, along with the stuff from the cars and consumer energy usage, caused heavy smog to smother the whole entire city. By the morning of December 5th, it was visible across hundreds of square miles. It became so thick and dense that by December 7th, there was no sunlight and visibility was only down to 5 yards in many places. Eventually, all transportation came to a halt, but not before the smog caused several train accidents, including a collision between 2 trains near the London Bridge. However, that wasn't the worst thing. The worst effect of the smog was the respiratory distress it caused in humans and animals, including difficulty breathing and a lot of people vomiting. A high number of people in the area, numbering all the way in the thousands, passed away in their sleep that weekend. Now, it's a little crazy to me that all this happened and so many people ended up losing their lives. Hopefully we can learn from this. At number 8 spot, we have Maternity Hospital. This building was constructed at the end of the 18th century on the territory of the hospital for participants in the Patriotic War of 1812 against the French army of Napoleon, and initially it was a general district hospital. It became a maternity hospital in the second half of the 20th century and was closed for reconstruction in 2009. The plan of this 2-story building resembles this Russian letter. The ceilings are more than 5 meters high, and in spite of the fact that the building is totally abandoned, it still has central heating and is rather clean. Bloggers and people passionate about abandoned sites visit it on a regular daily basis. The hospital is situated in the region of Vladimir, which is 186 kilometers to the east of Moscow. At number 7 spot, we have the Knights Templar curse. The Knight Templar was a Christian military order with the purpose to protect pilgrims in the Holy Land during the Crusade period. They had the power and the money. Philip IV from France sought to seize their wealth and power. So in a raid, Grand Master of the Templars, Jacques de Molay, was arrested along with his Templar comrades, being charged with heresy. Soon after, King Philip pressured Pope Clement V and made him agree to the reasoning. The Pope would issue a bill that made all Christian kings able to seize Templar property, which destroyed the Templar order, and Jacques de Molay was sentenced to death. Jacques, while burning on the stake, said, quote, "France will remember our last moments. We die innocent. And you, O Philip, my king, I pardon you. But my forgiveness is in vain, for your life is condemned at the tribunal of God. Within a year I shall await you also." Only 3 days later, Pope Clement would die in agony, and when he was cremated, the fire burned down the church as well. Then Philip IV died at the end of the year and died in great misery and in great pain. At number 6 spot, we have Scylla. This is a monster feared for her brutality. Scylla is a very interesting ocean creature in Greek mythology. She is usually beside the great whirlpool Cerberus and is a huge danger to those who wish to pass her waters. Out of all creatures in Greek mythology, her destruction ranks the highest, no questions asked. But she wasn't always this horrendous monster. In one depiction, she was a beautiful maiden and the fisherman turned god of the sea, Glaucus, fell in love with her. She wasn't interested at all because of his fishy tail, so he turned to Circe to ask for a potion to change her mind. However, Circe loved him and tried to convince him to forget about Scylla. Not wanting to punish the man she loved, Circe decided Scylla would suffer for her humiliation. Scylla was then transformed into a monster which had 6 serpentine-like heads, as well as the sounds of hounds spouting from her sides. There is no point in trying to escape her, cause you just can't. She is too powerful. All people who try to pass her are warned, quote, "Sail past, do not engage in a fight, as you will simply not win." In the hump of our list, we have real werewolves. You might think of werewolf stories as something only told for fun around the campfire, but that wasn't always the case. People truly believed in the existence of these creatures. In fact, in the 16th and 17th century in Europe, werewolf trials accompanied witch trials. It's even more surprising to note that the amount of people who confessed to being werewolves. Some were likely tortured into confession, but others believe that they were actually real werewolves. The idea that a human could transform into an animal was quite popular, and people thought they could make a deal with the devil in order to gain that power. In the 1500s, a French tailor was convicted of luring in, torturing, and slaying his victims before cooking and having them for dinner. He was also accused of turning into a werewolf to terrorize a town at night. Although there are no exact victim count, he was believed to have taken dozens of lives. The tailor made no attempt to defend himself. Instead, he cursed until his last breath, which he burnt at the stake. The court was apparently so shocked by his evil acts that the court burned the documents as well. At number 4 spot, we have the Chernobyl Black Bird. Just a few days before the infamous Chernobyl nuclear plant disaster, many workers at the plant reported seeing a large, dark, and mutated man with gigantic wings. This humanoid creature was given the name Black Bird of Chernobyl, and despite the fact that it had no head, it had piercing red eyes, would send chills to the spines of anyone caught looking at it. Before the disaster, workers claimed to have been plagued by terrifying dreams and many instances of bad luck. Fast forward to the day of the disaster, and now workers have reported seeing the large black bird-like creature with a 40-foot wingspan flying through the smoke of Chernobyl. Many people believe these creatures to be a bad omen since they are shown around history to appear before tragic events. Now this creature is nowhere to be found in the area, which makes me wonder what was truly haunting them at the famous nuclear plant. At number 3 spot, we have sirens. Originating from Greek mythology, sirens are creatures with enchanting musical voices that lure sailors and unsuspecting people to their doom. They were in fact the daughters of the river god Achilles and a muse. Sometimes they're depicted as something similar to mermaids, but in more classical depictions they had wings. The wings were given to them by Zeus's daughter Persephone after Hades kidnapped her and took her to the underworld. She gave the sirens wings to help locate her, but in the oceans the sirens would sing a song so beautiful that it would lure any kind of man to jump off the boat and swim until the sirens would just pull them down under and drown them. Number 2 spot, with the Nuckelavee. The Nuckelavee is a creature from the Orkney Islands and is considered a Scottish monster of Scandinavian and Celtic mythology. The Nuckelavee enjoys inflicting pain, tainting crops, and driving people from their homes. It appears as a horse with the torso of a man upon his back, standing 9 feet tall with long drapey arms attached to the rider, and it looks as though it had been skinned alive with only the muscles exposed. It was known as the creature of the sea that had come onto land just to wreak havoc. Its breath alone caused crops to wilt and even sicken cattle with diseases. At a number 1 spot, we have the Caves of Death. I mean, the name says it all. But if you happen to be in Scotland and you want to try something daring, then try out the Caves of Death. Archaeologists discovered this not too long ago and found that this was an ancient location used for human sacrifice, execution, and body disposal. Radiocarbon dating found mass of dismembered body parts, including children's heads left on poles in front of the cave's entrance, which were left there over 3,000 years ago. It's said they did this because they treated this place as a shrine where they would leave those who passed away, wait for them to decompose, and then collect the bones. Well, these are the top 10 scary European urban legends. What do you guys think? Leave a comment down below, but don't forget to like and subscribe this video for some more content. I'm your host Andrew, and I hope you guys have a scary day. Welcome back to Top 10 Scary Urban Legends here, and we've been on a US tour for a little bit. How about we take a turn to Europe, because they have legends there that are much darker and more sinister than US could ever get. I'm your host Andrew, and here are your top 10 European scary urban legends. Let's get right into it. Number 10, the Black Volga. The Black Volga is an urban legend that has captivated audiences for decades. The legend refers to a mysterious black or red GA721 or GA724 car that was allegedly used to abduct and murder people in the 1960s and 70s in countries like Poland, Romania, Hungary, Russia, Belarus, Ukraine, Greece, and Mongolia. The car is described as having white wheel rims, white curtains, or other white elements, which only adds to its eerie appearance. According to different versions of the legend, the car was driven by various nefarious characters. These included communist secret police, Russian mafia, and Satanists. And then there are some who say Satan himself drove it. The motives for the abductions and murders vary as well, with some versions stating that the victims were kidnapped and murdered for their blood, which was supposedly used as a cure for rich Westerners or Arabs suffering from leukemia. The legend of the Black Volga has become so ingrained in popular culture that it has spawned variations such as the car having horns instead of wing mirrors, the number 666 on the license plate, and even the driver asking for the time and killing the person who approaches the car to answer this question. But luckily, there's also an effective defense method for this. So they say whenever the driver of the Volga asks what time is it, you should just answer it's God's time. Then the car would just quickly vanish. Number 9, the Felixstowe Fire Demon. The Felixstowe Fire Demon sighting was an extraterrestrial sighting that took place in Felixstowe, England in 1965. The group that saw it consisted of the driver, 25-year-old Jeffrey Maskey, and his passengers, Mavis Fordyce and Michael Johnson. They were driving along an isolated tree-lined avenue when they decided to pull over to preserve gas. As they engaged in conversation, Johnson suddenly opened the car door and walked out into the murky night. Fordyce and Maskey exchanged perplexed glances as their companion vanished into the darkness, but simply assumed he had gone to use the bathroom in the woods. Just moments after Johnson disappeared, Fordyce and Maskey heard a strange high-pitched humming sound. Fordyce grew anxious as a disconcerting sound became louder, and Maskey leaned out the window to try and find the origin of the noise. It was then that he saw an oval-shaped orange object suspended in the sky above his car. Maskey estimated that the UFO was about 6 foot wide, and both he and Fordyce claimed that it was glowing so brightly that it glowed the surrounding countryside in an eerie orange glow. The following day, Johnson recovered his senses and told his friends and doctors of his harrowing encounter with an alien entity in the woods. He claimed that when he abruptly got out of the car the night before, he was compelled to do so by an unknown force, which insisted that he go into the woods. Johnson walked into the dark forest where he encountered a humanoid being with large sloping eyes that were glowing in the darkness. He also claimed that the creature was engulfed by an orange flame, and it was at that point that he just blacked out. Number 8, the Blood Countess. Dubbed the most prolific female murderer by Guinness World Records, Countess Elizabeth Bathory was infamous for her dark, gruesome truth. Born into a noble Hungarian family in 1560 or 1561, they don't really know the date, Bathory descended from multiple noble lineages and included the King of Poland and the Prince of Transylvania among her relatives. It is thought that her parents were both close relatives, and that this may have been the source of a number of health problems that she experienced as a child, such as severe epileptic seizures. After she got married at 15 years old with Ferenc Nadasti, rumors began to circulate about her atrocities. Between 1602 and 1604, the rumors about Bathory's crimes became impossible for the authorities to ignore. Lutheran minister Istvan Magyari made complaints about her both publicly and at the court in Vienna, but it took until 1610 for King Matthias II to assign 2 notaries, Andras Korestory and Moses Reiki, to collect evidence on the charges made against her. The evidence that was collected revealed that the girls as young as 10 were being abducted by Bathory, beaten severely, and mutilated before freezing or starving to death. Some girls were allegedly burned with hot tongs, and others had parts of their face bitten off. As a result, Bathory was arrested and imprisoned for life, where she died 4 years later. The true story of Bathory is a complex and disturbing tale of a woman who committed horrific crimes against innocent girls. And while the vampire and blood-bathing legends may make for a sensational story, the truth is terrifying on its own. Number 7, the Black Monk of Pontefract. The Black Monk of Pontefract is a legend that has been passed down through history, detailing a supposed poltergeist haunting that took place in the late 1960s and early 70s in a home in the town of Pontefract, England. The home belonged to a family by the name of Pritchard, who claimed to have experienced a series of terrifying and inexplicable disturbances from the moment they moved in. The disturbances began with small occurrences such as a gust of cold wind and a strange white powder falling from the air. However, as time went on, the disturbances became increasingly intense and more terrifying. Puddles of water began appearing on the kitchen floor, and even a plumber was unable to offer an explanation for this. The family reported hearing loud crashing sounds and seeing objects move or disappear, and they even claimed that a heavy chest of drawers began to sway on its own. The disturbances were so intense that at one point, the family was forced to flee the home and sleep at a neighbor's house out of fear alone. Even when they returned, the disturbances continued, with the family's daughter Diane being thrown from her bed and dragged up the stairs by an invisible force. The family even claimed that after they sprinkled holy water across the home, the poltergeist responded by painting upside down crosses on the living room walls and doors and destroying crucifixes wherever they were. The Pritchards also claimed that a black cloaked figure with a cowl over its head appeared over their bed, and they attributed this to the poltergeist, but it is not confirmed. Number 6, the Spring-Heeled Jack. Spring-Heeled Jack is a legendary figure from Victorian England who is said to be a fire-breathing devil man who could jump unnaturally high. The legend of Spring-Heeled Jack first started to appear in 1837, where residents of a London neighborhood began to report report bizarre attacks from a figure described as a ghost, imp, or devil in the shape of a large white bull. The figure mainly targeted women, ringing their doorbells, and when they answered, it would ravage their clothes with its claws. Other sightings have him simply ambushing people who were out walking. The figure was also described as wearing red shoes or armor, and despite the skepticism from the press, the legend of the Spring Heel Jack continued to grow. It grew so much that the Lord Mayor of London even addressed the growing number of stories, bringing up the theory that the attacks were perpetuated by a group of wealthy individuals. Some believe that it was a group of wealthy men dressing up and scaring people on a bet. However, the true nature of Spring Heel Jack still remains a mystery, and as of today, there is no evidence of what this person may have been. In the hump of our list, we have the Beast of Gévaudan. In the 1760s, a terrifying creature known as the Beast began killing nearly 300 people in a remote region of south-central France called the Gévaudan. The Beast was thought to be a huge animal, but its reputation grew to be much more sinister. Reports stated that it preferred attacking women and children, and that it would remove the victim's head and drink all of their blood, leaving nothing behind but a pile of bones. Illustrators had a field day representing the Beast, with many emphasizing its goriness and preference for found victims. The attacks in Gévaudan created widespread fear, to the point that King Louis intervened, offering a reward for its capture. Despite the efforts of hunters, a dragoon captain, and even professional wolf stalkers, the Beast was not captured until September 1765 by Francois Antoine. And even then, the attacks continued. Supernatural explanations of the attack continued to circulate, with some believing it to be the work of werewolves, but most historians now agree that the Gévaudan Beast was most likely a pack of large wolves. The legend of the Beast still holds a certain level of creep factor, making it a truly terrifying urban legend from France. Number 4, the Caves of Death. I mean, the name says it all, but if you happen to be in Scotland and want to try something daring, then maybe go try out the Caves of Death. Archaeologists discovered this not too long ago and found that this was an ancient location used for human sacrifice, execution, and body disposal. So pretty much a good place all in all. Radiocarbon dating found masses of dismembered body parts, including children's head left on poles in front of the cave's entrance, which were left there 3,200 years ago. It's said that they did this because they treated this place as a shrine where they would leave those who passed away, wait for them to decompose, then collect the bones. Number 3, the Queen of Spades. Basically the Russian version of Bloody Mary. This supernatural being is said to grant wishes to anyone who suffers her, but at a price, of course. As the Joker once said, if you're good at something, never do it for free. To summon her, similar to Bloody Mary, you need to go in a dark room with a mirror and light a candle in front of it. Once you have that set up, you need to place a Queen of Hearts playing card right up against the mirror. You now need to draw a door with some stairs on the mirror. Now in the front of the mirror, you need to clear your mind and close your eyes and say Queen of Spades 3 times. While you're saying your name, visualize the queen opening the door and walking down the stairs from the lipstick drawing. This part is where many people report hearing evil laughter just before they encountered the Queen of Spades. Once she appears, you need to hold your candle and say your wish out loud. Once you're done, blow out your candle. Because if you don't, her spirit may come out through the window and stay in our world. Basically, chanting a name in a mirror doesn't have good implications in any culture. Number 2, the Chernobyl Black Bird. Just a few days before the infamous Chernobyl nuclear plant disaster, many workers at the plant reported seeing a large, dark, and mutated man with gigantic wings. This humanoid creature was given the name Black Bird of Chernobyl, and despite the fact that it had no head, it had piercing red eyes that would send chills to the spine of anyone caught looking. Before the nuclear disaster, workers claimed to have been plagued by terrifying dreams and many instances of bad luck. Fast forward to the day of the disaster, and now workers have reported seeing a large black bird-like creature with a 40-foot wingspan flying through the smoke of Chernobyl. Many people believe these creatures to be a bad omen since they are shown around history to appear before tragic events. Now this creature is nowhere to be found in the area, which makes many wondering what was truly haunting them at this famous nuclear plant. Number 1, the London Fog. On December 4th, 1952, smog began to cover all of London. The smog was present for 5 whole days and ended up leading to the passing of at least 4,000 people. On a regular Tuesday afternoon, a high-pressure air mass stalled over Thames River Valley. Suddenly, cold air came in from the west side and the air in London became trapped. The problem worsened by the low temperatures, which caused people living there to burn extra coal in their surfaces to keep warm. The smoke, soot, and sulfur dioxide from the area's industries, along with the stuff from cars and consumer energy usage, caused heavy smog to smother the entire city. By the morning of December 5th, it was visible across hundreds of square miles. It became so thick and dense that by December 7th, there was no sunlight and visibility was down to only 5 yards in many places. Eventually, all transportation came to a halt, but not before the smog caused several train accidents, including a collision between 2 trains near the London Bridge. However, that wasn't the worst thing. The worst effect of the smog was the respiratory distress it caused in us humans and animals, including difficulty breathing and many people vomiting. A high number of people in the area, numbering in the thousands, passed away in their sleep that weekend alone. Now, it's a little crazy to me that all this happened and so many people ended up losing their lives, but I guess you can't really control Mother Nature when it comes down to stuff like this. These are the top 10 European urban legends not for the faint-hearted. I'm your host Andrew, and what you guys think about this list? Leave a comment down below with your thoughts, and don't forget to like and subscribe to this video and click that bell so you know when our next video is coming out. I hope you guys have a scary day.
In Russia, you don't tell scary story tell you. Whether it be a demonic bird humanoid or their version of the Bloody Mary, Russia's cold and isolated regions make it a perfect setting for some of the scariest stories in the world. I'm your host, Andrew Ligero, and here are your top 10 Russian scary urban legends. To start our list right, at number 10, we have the Queen of Spades. Basically the Russian version of Bloody Mary, this supernatural being is said to grant wishes to anyone who summons her, but at a price, of course. As the Joker once said, if you're good at something, never do it for free. To summon her, similar to Bloody Mary, you need to go into a dark room with a mirror and light a candle in front of it. Once you have that set up, you need to place a Queen of Hearts playing card right against the mirror. Then, taking lipstick, you need to draw a door with some stairs on the mirror. Now in front of the mirror, you need to clear your mind and close your eyes and say, Queen of Spades, come. 3 times. While you're saying her name, visualize the Queen of Spades opening the door and walking the stairs from the lipstick drawing. This part is where many report hearing evil laughter just before they encounter the Queen of Spades. Once she appears to you, you need to hold your candle and say your wish out loud. Once you're done, blow out your candle. If not, her spirit may come out of the mirror and stay in our world. Coming in at number 9, we have the Black Curtains. This Russian story started off as a simple request from a mother to her daughter, asking her to go to the store to purchase some curtains for the home. She urged the daughter to not buy any black curtains under any circumstances. However, when the girl got to the shop, she saw that there are only black curtains. So despite her mother's wishes, she decided to get them rather than go home empty-handed. When she arrived home, her mom was upset. But since they had no curtains, she put them up anyway. And this is where things get worse. During that night, the girl's father was strangled, and the night after, the same would happen to her mother and her brother. The traumatized girl rushed to the police, and it was decided that they would set up cameras and microphones all over the home to investigate the murders. They ordered the girl to go to bed as normal, but as time went by, the black curtain appeared to stretch and move, reaching for the girl in her bed. The police immediately opened fire and the curtain began to bleed out and let out a demonic screech as it fell to the ground. Stealing our number 8 spot, we have the Old Lady of Ostankino. This is a 5-century-old story of a lady living in the district of Ostankino, Moscow. The strange thing is that this lady only appears to Russian leaders, not other citizens. It is said that she appears to Russian leaders to warn them of upcoming dangers such as attacks, sicknesses, plagues, you name it. In return, this old lady only asked them to never farm on the land that she appeared on, in Ostankino. Despite getting useful advice, a powerful ruler of Ostankino disobeyed these orders and ordered men to start digging in the land. The lady was angry and summoned all the spirits of the land, and it was said that they possessed the residents of the city and led them all to their dooms. But at number 7, we have Anatoly Moskvin, the corpse collector. This is definitely a case where life is stranger than fiction. Legend has it that a mysterious person roams Russia, waiting for people to kidnap. He then kills them, preserves them, then puts their mummified bodies on display. It's a horror story fit for nightmares. This mysterious person was later found and arrested, going by the name of Anatoly Moskvin. He was reported to have killed 29 women, would mummify them, and would turn them into large dolls. His parents even thought they were large regular dolls. Anatoly was no stranger to the cemetery and had visited with his friends on multiple occasions. Here is where they said he discovered his sinister hobby. He even claimed that he was empathetic to the corpses as his sole purpose was to bring them back alive. Securing our number 6 spot, we have the Domovoi. The Domovoi is a house spirit in Slavic folklore. It is a masculine, typically small, bearded, and sometimes covered in hair all over. According to some traditions, the domovoi takes on the appearance of current or former owners of the house, but has a gray beard, sometimes with tails or little horns. It is the protector of the house, and every home is said to have its own domovoi. The domovoi protected not only the human inhabitants of the house, but their herds and household animals as well. In some areas, Slavs believed that prosperity and well-being could not exist in a new home until the head of the family died and became its guardian spirit. Right in the hump of our list, we have the infamous Baba Yaga. This is a Slavic folklore that is commonly told around Russia. The Baba Yaga is a supernatural entity or witch that takes the form of an elderly lady. She is said to be the refugee of the dead, meaning this is the form she had taken after coming back from the afterlife. Appearing as weak and fragile, this would be a good way for the Baba Yaga to disguise what her true sinister intentions were. She is described as having bright red eyes and sharp metal or stone teeth. Her house is reported by witnesses to be a dark house deep in the woods that is standing on 2 chicken legs. Her house is said to be moved around by Baba Yaga's power to travel to different locations to find more victims. When people encounter the Baba Yaga, she is said to be helpful on some occasions, but most of the time, she would be dangerous and bloodthirsty. For example, in one story, she would do something heroic like locating a missing bride, but in another story, she is a child-eating monster who can't stop. A famous disaster takes our number 4 spot, the Chernobyl blackbird. Just a few days before the infamous Chernobyl nuclear plant disaster, many workers at the plant reported seeing a large, dark, and mutated man with gigantic wings. This humanoid creature was given the name Black Bird of Chernobyl, and despite the fact it had no head, it had piercing red eyes that would send chills to the spines of anyone caught looking. Before the nuclear disaster, workers claimed to have been plagued by terrifying dreams and many instances of bad luck. Fast forward to the day of the disaster, and now workers have reported seeing a large black bird-like creature with a 40-foot wingspan flying through the smoke of Chernobyl. Many people believe these creatures to be a bad omen, since they are shown around history to appear before tragic events. You should definitely know this one, but at number 3 we have the Russian sleep experiment. This experiment was conducted in the 1940s in a top-secret Soviet facility. The Soviets used 5 Gulag prisoners to test what no sleep did to their brains and body in 30 days. They promised freedom when, or rather, if they survived. They would use air stimulants to keep them awake for all of the days. In the course of 5 days, the situation went out of control. The subjects blocked observation and went all kinds of crazy with constant screaming and moaning. Then, on the 9th day, a prisoner was screaming so loud that he completely tore his vocal cords right off. Then on day 14, they tried to evoke a reaction by telling the prisoners they would open the chamber, but they would get a voice back saying, "We don't want to be freed." Then on day 15, after another day of silence, they decided to open the chamber, where they saw the unspeakable. When they opened it, they immediately noticed one of the prisoners was dead due to mutilation. As the soldiers were taking out the other prisoners out, they noticed chunks of human meat all over the room. The other 4 had muscles and skin torn off from their bodies, which all seemed to be self-inflicted. Their abdominal organs had also been removed. As soldiers were trying to get them out, they began begging to stay inside the chamber with the gas on. But due to this traumatizing sight, the witnessing soldiers would follow a similar fate, with many dying and others reported ripping off their own reproductive organs. Beethoven would be shocked at our number 2 spot, but we have the red piano. This story begins when these parents bought a red piano for their daughter, who had all kinds of desire to finally play on one. Once she had started playing, she couldn't stop. Just like a young Beethoven, after hours of playing, her fingers would begin to hurt. Her parents relieved her by telling her that it was normal and that's just part of the learning process. When she went back to play the piano a few days later, she found that the piano was broken. The parents asked the lady to fix it, but oddly, she asked everyone to exit the room to ensure that there were no distractions. After it was fixed, the girl played once again, but would fall ill after a while of playing on it. Then, the piano broke again, with the pair having to call the same lady to fix. Due to the curiosity of how she fixed it, the parents decided to peep through the keyhole of the room to see what she was doing. The lady was found opening the piano, pulling out a jar of blood and drinking it. When the police inspected the piano, it was discovered that the piano had tiny needles on the keys, so every time the daughter played, she was really getting drained of her own blood. Taking our number 1 spot of our list, we have the Chapayoskos. Once there was a couple, Elena and Alexei, who worked at a chemical plant. Their love for each other was very strong. However, one day before their wedding, an accident occurred. Alexei was at the chemical plant when a chemical fire bursted out of nowhere, eventually making the whole plant explode. Unfortunately, Unfortunately for her, it was too late to escape, and he passed away in the fire along with one other co-worker. Upon hearing the devastating news, Elena, with no intentions to live anymore, threw herself in front of a train. Eyewitnesses said that she wore a white gown before jumping on the track, which was the same outfit that her grandmother gave her for the wedding. She was later buried in the municipal cemetery, and now people who decide to visit their loved ones at the cemetery report seeing Elena in her white gown strolling through the grounds. Apparently, her ghost is still looking for her loved one Alexei. Well, there we have it, our top 10 Russian scary urban legends. Russia is truly a place of great mystery, but if anything on our list stood out, or if you have an idea what country we should cover next, please let us know in the comment section below. Thank you for tuning in, and take it easy.